Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, I'm down.
Katie,
I know.
you're
Why are you
muted
laughing?
again.
Did you do that
It's the
again?
second. It's
I
the
know, but I
second
didn't
week.
do it. It's Brad.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it either. I think
All
that
right.
it's a. Anyway.
Anyway, you like the way I just said it was Brad. If it wasn't me, it had to be Brad. It could have been the same powers that be who are maybe tampering Moeed Pirzada's connection. Who knows? We'll see. That's what happens when you talk about Pakistan. I'm just saying that off the record in front of, all the people watching. But welcome to the Katie Halper Show. It is a pleasure to be here with you guys. And we have a jam-packed show for you guys. We have so many great conversations that we're going to be having. And we're going to be speaking to Prem Thakker, also going to be speaking to Moeed Pirzada, and we're going to be speaking to Russ Dobular from Due Dissidence. But before I bring those guys on, please do give this stream a thumbs up. That is a very easy way to support the show for free. That is a good way to beat back the algorithmic suppression that definitely happens. So you just give it a thumbs up, free way to support the show. Also, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. We're almost at 400,000 subs, which is very exciting. Another way you can support the show for free. Also, please do become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that is patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. For $5 a month, you give yourself the gift of lots of bonus content, early release, extended interviews. If you can't do the $5 a month, if you can just do $1 a month, that's $12 a year. You just get to help make the show happen because, not to sound corny, but we literally couldn't do the show without your support. So again, that's at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. We will be doing an extra stream on Friday, and then we'll be doing a regular stream next Tuesday, as always, at 7 p.m. Okay, so we are going to bring on our first guest, but again, we're going to be talking with three great guests. So the last segment will be with Russ from Due Dissidence. We're going to kind of talk about anything and everything. It'll be a bit of a looser conversation. The second segment will be a very informative conversation with Moeed Pirzada about the latest in Pakistan and the sentencing of Imran Khan and his wife. But our first guest is someone who you guys all know and love. You've seen him very diplomatically take on the State Department back when there were actually press conferences. And this person of whom I'm speaking is Prem Thakker, who is a reporter at Zeteo News. He was previously a politics reporter at the Intercept and the New Republic. So welcome, Prem.
Hello, hello. Thank you. It's good to be here. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a happy holiday season, whether you're with friends or family or with your friends, Katie and Prem. Hope we can have a good holiday together.
Oh, that's good. Holidays with Katie and Prem. I like that. Yeah, this is our first segment.
That's right.
Well, you are very prolific. You do such important work. You cover things from Gaza to Bari Weiss to Epstein. And I'm just going to start off. I think it would be a good place to start with the latest with this Bari Weiss shenanigans. We can call it Bari Gate. I just made that up. You actually haven't. You've been doing quite a bit of research into this. And as people probably know, the so-called journalist Bari Weiss, who is the founder of the Free Press and now editor-in-chief of CBS, axed a story about that was, I guess, kind of embarrassing for Donald Trump. Can you, before we have a discussion, get into the analysis of this story, can you just set up what exactly happened?
Yes. So as a reminder for those who maybe don't remember everything that's happened in the past 72 hours, which is totally fine and understandable. On Sunday, there was set to be a 60-minute segment on CECOT, the El Salvadorian mega prison, the gulag that Trump and Vance and Rubio and the like have been sending people to with no due process, with no semblance of constitutionality, something that the Supreme Court has spoken against, something that lower courts have spoken against, and so forth. And at the last minute, CBS brass sort of mysteriously announced that they would not be airing the segment. On Sunday, they made this announcement through Twitter and whatnot. And this caught a bunch of people by surprise. I remember I had reached out to a few sources in CBS asking, what's going on? And that was, for some of them, the first time they had heard of this too, that this was happening. There was one source I had sent the announcement to, and they said, I'm discussing with some colleagues right now, and all of us are confused. And so that just goes to show that this was very much an out of nowhere sort of unilateral decision that came from the very top of CBS's new leadership structure. At least that was sort of the sense amongst people in CBS off the bat. In the first few minutes and hours, people were kind of speculating. They're like, I bet, Bari Weiss had something to do with this. But it was still like, all right, there could be other explanations, whatnot. But of course, in the hours to come, it was revealed that indeed Bari Weiss was the one who had stepped in to stop this story from being published. And what was the initial sort of impression was actually led by one of the 60 Minutes team members who had come out to say that, we had done the reporting. This had gone through the legal review that was needed. It was screened 5 times, they said. This was, weeks in the making, and that this was mere hours before. This is Sharon Alfonsi, the CBS 60 Minutes correspondent, who had said that she had learned on Saturday that Weiss had spiked the story, and she had said that she asked, and the team had asked for a call with Bari Weiss to discuss the decision, but Alfonsi said they were not afforded the courtesy. And again, Alfonsi had claimed that the story had gone through screening 5 times. It went through legal processes, editorial processes. And one thing that she had warned, and this is, again, the first sort of revelation and insight we had received into what had happened, she was warning in that initial insight that to spike a story or to stop a story due to perhaps the government refusing to participate in the story, that can't be a sort of valid reason to do that.
Right.
That just gives the government essentially a kill switch, that if they choose not to respond or engage or appear on camera, that cannot be a reason to not run a story. And so that was like the first preview into, perhaps what was going on. In the hours to come, and in the following day, Bari Weiss had then sent out a memo to staff that kind of attempted to do some damage control. Now, I should note that there is some disagreement in the public reporting about whether the administration did or did not respond to 60 Minutes questions, but I'll segue this into Bari Weiss's damage control memo, and I'll explain why I mentioned this disagreement. In her memo, she had wrote to CBS staffers that one reason she wanted to put a pause on the segment was that the segment did not present the administration's argument for deporting people to CECOT. The memo also said that it did not thoroughly or sufficiently detail these people's criminal histories to the extent that they had one. Now, what's important is that she had made these complaints and others in this memo to staff as a means to do damage control. And then it turns out the segment that was spiked leaks because it was aired in some global markets, namely in Canada, I guess inadvertently. It wasn't stopped in time, which I guess underscores, again, how last minute these decisions were made. In this leaked segment that reportedly does seem to be the segment that was supposed to run, it does, in fact, present the administration's argument for deporting people to CECOT quite earlier on. It also does, in fact, detail the criminal histories to the extent that these people have any in the segment. So at least 2 of the complaints that Bari Weiss had to retroactively justify stopping the segment were in fact evidently inaccurate. And I go back to one other point just to put a fine point on this. I mentioned just a minute ago that there was some disagreement in reporting about whether the administration did or did not respond to questions. CBS staffers maintain that they did not. There has been reporting from outlets like Axios that says, no, actually the administration did. What I will say is that in the segment, they note that one of the agencies deferred entirely to El Salvador. And so a lot of these claims being made to suggest that this segment did not do enough work are in fact just seemingly inaccurate. And so that's sort of the contours of what had happened. A story was weeks and months perhaps in the making, was spiked in the final hours before the story was set to publish. Again, this is a 60-minute segment where a lot of work is done to make these segments happen. And retroactively, post facto, there has been some level of damage control to justify the decision that even those sort of post facto arguments that, CBS leadership had time to fine tune to justify are actually also falling apart under scrutiny.
Right. Now, thank you. This is very helpful outline. Can you explain a little bit how Bari Weiss got to be where she is?
Yes.
Kind of a mystery,
So, yeah. Bari Weiss has been in the media for quite a long time in her professional career. I guess, one sort of interesting way to look at this more broadly is she was a student at Columbia University, and while she was there, she was leading this organization or helping leading this organization called Columbians for Academic Freedom. While she was a part of this organization, supposedly in support of academic freedom, she was part of this crusade to get pro-Palestine Columbia professors fired. And I recommend, including Joseph Mossad, and I recommend people read. There's a lot of good writing on this era of Columbia generally that has, of course, continued up to today. But I believe Glenn Greenwald had a good piece at The Intercept back in 2018 about it, which I would recommend people to get, a taste of what this all entailed. But of course, that was years ago, and I'm not someone who would ever, pin what someone does in the past, or as a student as some sort of scarlet letter of who they are as a person. But it's interesting that she was doing that years ago at Columbia University, and then years later now, while she leads something called the Free Press, is apparently censoring this team that she has been made the leader of in a way that effectively kind of runs cover for a president who himself has sought to get pro-Palestine Columbia students deported. And so sort of the arc of her career is interesting in that way. But other landmarks of her career is that she was also an opinion editor for the New York Times, something that was also part of a notable episode in which she had left in 2020. She wrote this sort of letter announcing why she felt that the New York Times was fostering this toxic environment that discouraged independent thought. She had said that in such a place, self-censorship has become the norm. And again, it's quite notable that now, after years of, upon leaving the New York Times, then creating this successful blog called The Free Press, and now being made leader of CBS News, is now engaging in a form of, whether it's internal self-censorship, I'm not sure, but in terms of a self-censorship of her own newsroom and her reporters that have worked so hard. The irony is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. In a way, I mean, we're actually going to be later on in the stream. I'm going to be talking about some of her Columbia days of glory with Russ Dobular, but in some ways, it's she's come full circle, because she did, of course, while there, try to get Joseph Mossad and other professors in trouble. She pretended that that's not what it was about. We'll get into that later, but I want to ask you more generally about Larry Ellison and CBS and how she even got to where she is in terms of the CBS move.
Yes. So for those who may not know, Larry Ellison, of course, is one of the most wealthiest people on the planet. He always oscillates in the sort of top 5, I believe. He I think right now would be the second richest man on earth. It's hard to keep track of this upper echelon sometimes, but he's one of the richest people on earth. He is someone who is quite pro-Israel. He is someone who gave, I believe, upwards of $16 million to friends of the IDF. I believe at the time that was their biggest gift, and might still be the case. He is someone who has hosted Benjamin Netanyahu, again, wanted international war criminal, on his private island. And he is someone who is also quite friendly with the Trump administration. And he is someone who, because of that friendliness, perhaps, is going to be part of the co-ownership cohort of TikTok through the new Trump-backed deal to transfer American ownership of TikTok to a consortium of people, including Larry Ellison, who I should add, of course, gets a lion's share of his wealth from Oracle. His son David was who spent $150 million to buy the free press. And accordingly, because of the larger company, Paramount Skydance, that they also have acquired, which is the ownership company of CBS, part of this $150 million deal to buy the free press, which is, again, a Substack blog.
So crazy.
For $150 million, I mean, I'm kudos to them for that deal. I'm not sure, based on many other media experts, whether that valuation is exactly proportional. I'm not quite sure, but in any case, I digress. David Ellison spent $150 million to buy the free press. Accordingly, made Bari Weiss, who is the co-founder of the free press, made Bari Weiss the editor-in-chief of CBS. And I should add that the editor-in-chief of CBS News was not a specific job title previously, that this was something that was in some respects created for Bari Weiss to lead CBS in this way. And one other thing I should just add is since taking on this role, I think, of course, there was a lot of people in CBS who were a little skeptical, treating this very tepidly just because of the way it unfolded, and because of the subsequent colleagues who lost their jobs, including the race and culture unit. But it's also been trying for them because this editor-in-chief role is new in some respects. They don't really know what is or is not in Weiss's purview. So, for instance, this episode of spiking the 60 Minutes segment, of course, an editor has complete and total rights to express their concerns for segments and to make sure that they're making the product they want to make. That's totally up to them and their prerogatives. What's, I think, been frustrating for some people in CBS is that, for one, the way this was handled felt very unilateral. It was something that, again, many CBS staffers didn't know was happening until they found out from Twitter or from reporters outside of CBS reaching out to them. For another, for Weiss to have had several chances up to the weekend before this was set to appear to, express some concerns, and only doing so at the last minute was also quite kind of confounding and befuddling for some people. And also there's this aspect of what's the line between Bari Weiss serving as an overseer of the newsroom versus being a manager versus being on-air talent. Some may have seen recently that Bari Weiss hosted a very heavily promoted town hall with Erika Kirk, something that they were billing as this huge event that was going to be very big for the CBS newsroom. One ironic point of irony I would just mention is that another aspect of why Weiss was suggesting they should hold on the CBS segment, the 60 Minutes segment on CECOT, was that she wanted to advance the story. And the best way to advance the story was in part by getting people like Stephen Miller or the other principals of the Trump administration on the record. And that would be the way to advance the story. For those who have not yet seen the leaked segment, I would recommend you take a look, because if this is indeed the segment that sources say was the segment that was meant to run, it does in fact introduce a lot of troubling allegations of CECOT and gives voice to the voices of those who were deported and sent to this prison facility in a way that massively advances the story, in a way that perhaps some have pointed out. The Erika Kirk town hall that Weiss made herself the talent for to interview Erika Kirk did not really seem to advance the story, in part because Erika Kirk has been doing many, many media appearances and in fact repeated some lines that felt quite similar in her town hall with Bari Weiss. So a lot of these standards that Weiss is making about what does and does not advance stories, what does and does not constitute appropriate journalistic practice, are kind of seen by CBS staffers as a little willy-nilly, which gets to this broader issue of A, what is her job? B, is she the right person for this job?
Right. Yeah. Well, I thought we could actually play some of the video because it was posted on Twitter. Although, as you pointed out on your own Twitter account, X, There have been parts of it have been removed from TikTok. But is there any part in particular you want us to? I mean, it looked like the first 6 minutes were interesting, but we can just start from the beginning. Is there any part in particular you want us to look at?
No, I think the framing of it, I think, is quite helpful for people to get a good taste of it. I think that's a great place to start.
Great. So let's take a look. Oh, Bucky's upset about it.
You may recall earlier this year when the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelan men to El Salvador, a country most had no connection to. The White House claimed the men were terrorists, part of a violent gang, and invoked a centuries-old wartime power, saying it allowed them to deport some men immediately without due process, an unusual strategy that sparked an ongoing legal battle. Tonight, you'll hear from some of those men. They describe torture, sexual and physical abuse inside CECOT, one of El Salvador's harshest prisons, where they say they endured 4 months of hell. It began as soon as the planes landed. The deportees thought they were headed back to Venezuela, but then saw hundreds of Salvadoran police waiting for them on the tarmac. Shackled, they were paraded in front of cameras, pushed onto buses, and delivered to CECOT, El Salvador's notorious maximum security prison.
En el momento en que llegamos, el director del CECOT.
When we got there, the CECOT director was talking to us.
Y lo principal.
The first thing he told us was that we would never see the light of day or night again.
Día ni la de la noche.
He said, "Welcome to hell. I'll make sure you never leave."
Did you think you were going to die there?
We thought we were already the living dead, honestly.
We met Luis Munoz Pinto in Colombia.
Brad, can you pause
he was
it?
a college student.
Oh, sorry. Can I pause it or no, Brad?
No, I'm sorry. Unfortunately,
That's okay.
I
I just
wasn't
wanted to
able
make sure.
to.
Okay. So Ray, is there anything you want to say so far, or do you want to just keep watching? Because usually we can start and stop. But
Yes, I mean, I would just note that right off the bat, in the first 30 seconds there was when they discussed the legal authority that the Trump administration was pulling from to justify what, as we have seen since then, is these lawless deportations, kidnappings, and transfers to this prison. I think there's much more to say, but I think let's keep watching before we get too sidetracked.
Repressive Venezuela and hope to seek asylum in the United States.
Brad, rewind a little bit, like a couple
says
seconds. So we can hear what it
We
says.
thought we were already the living dead, honestly.
We met Luis Munoz Pinto in Colombia. He was a college student in repressive Venezuela and hoped to seek asylum in the United States. In 2024, he says he waited in Mexico until his scheduled appointment with U.S. Customs and Border Protection in California. During that interview,
They just looked at me and told me I was a danger to society.
you have no criminal record.
No tengo.
I never even got a traffic ticket.
Nevertheless, he was detained by customs. He says he spent 6 months locked up in the U.S., waiting for a decision on his asylum case when he was deported. One of 252 Venezuelans sent to CECOT between March and April.
Pause,
Inside,
Brad.
he says their hands and feet were.
So, and then rewind a couple seconds. Sorry, but this is not video that anyone's like denied, right? No one is pushing back on this video being real. I mean, you had both the Bukele and the Trump administration like bragging and showing that footage of that kind of abusive, physically abusive behavior.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the same group of people that has people like Kristi Noem pulling up to the facility and taking selfies with the people behind the cells. So there's no scruple of any of this footage or sense that they're trying to run away from it.
Right. They ran on this sadism. I mean, they wouldn't call it sadism, but they ran on being, there's a real cruelty, like a spectacle that we don't see, with other presidents. And a lot of people critique, oh, well, the Democrats do this stuff too. And that is true. And Biden deported a record number of people, but for better or for worse, I mean, there is a difference in terms of the spectacle of cruelty that we see.
Yeah. I had written about this last week. there's been a lot of discussion, especially amongst people like Bari Weiss, and I think sometimes I won't give too much credence, but just the general sense of virtue signaling, the idea that, sometimes people purport to have certain beliefs, but they are not really about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, people like Bari Weiss kind of taken it in a slightly different route, but nonetheless, there's been so much discussion about that over the past 6, 7, 8 years. I feel like there needs to be so much more discussion right now about something that's way more present, which is very clearly vice signaling. And to me, it's just it's so troubling to think of the idea that some of these people think there's such an audience for it,
Right.
that beyond there's already been the sort of Adam Serwer essay from the first administration about how cruelty is the point. And I think we
Right.
kind of get the idea of how some expressions of this cruelty helps bond, the in-group into glorifying the domination of the out-group.
Right.
We get some of that. But this newer sort of flavor of it where it's vice signaling is the play one in every day in, day out of their social strategy, of their PR strategy, that is the defining way that they go about policy, is troubling, because it is, again, if politics is meant to be the collection of the collective will into action, into the halls of power, they're operating on the idea that this is what the collective will in America is, which is craving and gleeing over all this vice.
Right.
And it's scary, because it's are they right? Is there a big enough audience? And I think obviously it's in many respects up to us in our own individual ways to reject this, not in a way where it's go vote, but more in this deeper sort of spiritual sense of very much showing whatever the world is to you, whether that's your friends, your neighbors, your family members, that this thing that's being branded towards all of us, I'm not buying it. That's not being done in my name. And I think that sort of deeper rejection, I think, is much more necessary in this very moment than this idea of registering people to vote to, reject this kind of thing at the ballot box, which is, whatever, also important. But there's this deeper sort of spiritual stake when you think about the cruelty that you're talking about, that's just blasted at us every single day.
Yeah. So here's one example of you describing vice signaling final boss. And it has this, we've shown this a bunch because it's just absolutely repulsive. It is you're responding to a tweet by Pete Hegseth, and it says, "For your Christmas wish list," and a classic Franklin story, Franklin targets narco terrorists. And we talked about this actually with an interesting perspective on this was Lawrence Wilkerson, himself a retired colonel, who was disgusted by this. But yeah, it's vice signaling, and it's just cruelty. And again, it's funny because I almost feel like Bari Weiss's discomfort with showing this story speaks to the way that she is trying to act as a kind of bridge between open-minded, enlightened, liberal thinkers and the Trump administration, right? So for her audience, it's not polite to be so obvious in your abuse of people from other countries, right? For Trump's, it is. Right. And she really does, put kind of a refined face on this beast of violence. So you can see why she couldn't, release it.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Let's watch a little bit more, and then we'll shift gears a little bit.
Definitely.
To CECOT between March and April. Inside, he says their hands and feet were tied, forced to their knees. Their heads were shaved.
That is
There was
so
blood
disgusting.
everywhere, screams, people crying, people who couldn't take it and were urinating and vomiting on themselves. When you get there, you already know you're in hell. You don't need anyone else to tell you.
He says the guards began savagely beating them with their fists and batons. Tell me about what they did to you personally.
4 guards grabbed me, and they beat me until I bled, to the point of agony. They knocked our faces against the wall. That was when they broke one of my teeth.
CECOT, the Terrorism Confinement Center, was built in 2022.
All right, so I think
that's part of Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele's sweeping
enough, right?
Yeah.
I think, right? Yeah. That the head shaving is all of it is so disturbing, but that in particular is, I don't know, there's something really viscerally painful to see. Yeah.
Yeah,
There.
completely.
It's interesting because what is the thing that they said about hell? Remind me of Welcome to Hell, right? Is what they
Mhm,
said
mhm.
and that's also was in the B'Tselem report on
Yeah. Mhm.
about the torture network of torture prisons, and they
Yeah.
said that an Israeli prisoner said, "Welcome to hell."
Yeah.
And I guess it was said in this context as well.
Yeah, I remember as we posted about the video and about the whole just debacle that has unfolded. There were many people who responded after they saw the video saying, I mean, I just feel like I'm watching a video of what we could be seeing in Gaza right now if there's independent press. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, I mean, of course, it's not just that the imperial boomerang goes from abroad to home, but also it has a lot of
Right.
stops on the way there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's horrifying. I mean,
That's
and I mean, you talk about, uh, of course, it's not fully clear 100% why exactly Weiss and CBS canned or paused the episode. We don't know 100% for sure yet. If it was to stop the visibility of it, obviously the exact opposite has happened. And I think
Right.
there's so many more people who are much more now attuned to exactly the horrors that are being done, again, particularly in their name, which,
yeah.
I think it's not necessary to tie all of these things back to like politics or like what this does to the Republicans or whatnot.
Right.
But in this moment, it's obvious that like the Republican Party and the Trump administration is so like at their last end in terms of the popularity that for something like this to then just add to the list
Right.
amid this whole Epstein Files debacle, amid just so many, amid the fact that everything is still so darn expensive, et cetera, just adding this to the fire.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were not eager for this to happen.
Right. Well, speaking of Trump, we actually have a relevant clip, I think, that we can play, and then we will shift into the Epstein story. But shortly before this cancellation occurred, so we're talking about Friday, December 19th, Trump was at a rally in North Carolina, and he had some interesting comments to say about CBS and 60 Minutes and its new ownership. Let's take a listen.
They don't scream, but NBC is really bad. And CBS, I mean, I love the new owners of CBS. Something happens to them, though. 60 Minutes has treated me worse under the new ownership than they just keep treating me. They just keep hitting me. It's crazy.
So I'm not sure what that's in reference to.
Yes, so I'm glad you brought it up because the timeline of this is worth remembering, which is reportedly Bari Weiss had gotten her first real taste of the segment on Thursday, and she gave some comments, but the segment was continuing to advance as it went through the process through the weekend. Friday, Trump makes those comments. Saturday is when reportedly she spiked the story. And so again, whether the timing is explanatory or not, we don't know, but the timing itself is unfortunate to say the least in terms of them trying to beat the allegations, so to speak, that this wasn't political in some respect. Something that we had mentioned actually in our story on this whole episode was that it's interesting to actually consider how Trump world views figures like Bari Weiss. So, there has been this fixation, understandably, on the idea that her and her role represents this broader sort of like media lurch towards pliancy, complicity, favor towards Trump. I don't think that's an outlandish thing to suggest, obviously, given everything that we've just laid out, including all the money involved with people like the Ellisons. But there are people in Trump world who, obviously, Trump world is big and diverse in its own respect, and many of them actually, don't love Bari Weiss. But I remember in our story there were amid people like Rick Grinnell and Katie Miller and others who were really sticking up for CBS and Bari Weiss after the decision to cut this story. There was one senior Trump official who told us that if nothing else, Weiss is a useful idiot, I guess is what they said. Their words, not mine, with regards to how they view Weiss and her role and people like her's role in the media landscape. And I think this clip of Trump sort of battering CBS a little bit is actually quite indicative of what sources have told us as well, which is the sense that like sort of pliant enough media like CBS, Trump will sort of hit here and there and kind of compliment them here and there, just kind of keep them in check a little bit, that and kind of maintain also kind of this illusion that, no, like Trump and CBS aren't friends, like that's silly. Always kind of just like keeping this air of like combativeness such that CBS, in their efforts to be pliant and favorable towards Trump, will always feel like they need to do a little more to impress him and to keep that favor. And at the same time, there is this sort of illusion that like there's still this sense of antagonism between Trump and media that actually is in some respects favoring him. And that, again, is something that sources, including in Trump world, have told us themselves. This is not just me, sort of pontificating. That might be their pontification, but that is how some of them view their relationship to outlets like CBS and people like Bari Weiss.
Right. Yeah. It's a pseudo-adversarial relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess just one thing I want to make sure I bring up before we pivot in relation to the story we had written about this whole episode is that it's also important to think about what Bari Weiss and the Free Press was doing in their treatment of CECOT before this. In one of their stories that they had written months ago, I believe in April, it was a sort of newsletter story written by two Free Press writers. And I'm just going to pull up the quotes just to make sure I do it justice. The hottest campaign stop is this Salvadoran supermax. That's how they sort of started the newsletter about CECOT. The piece sort of described how Republicans were going to the mega prison, again, a prison that, as the 60 Minutes segment has laid out, is notorious for these horrible accusations of torture and human rights abuses. It describes how these Republicans go to this prison to take photos in front of the inmates, again, citing someone like DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. As they put it, the Free Press writes this, Kristi Noem, quote, posting a fun video in front of caged, tatted men. They positioned that kind of sort of gleeful description of what Republicans like Kristi Noem were doing at this prison alongside Democrats like Chris Van Hollen, who famously visited the prison in efforts to demand the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was one of many individuals the U.S. wrongfully sent there. So right off the bat, one way the Free Press is positioning CECOT in this particular story is this kind of both sidesy kind of like DC swampy palace intrigue thing of, oh, this is just a great place for politicians to campaign. On one hand, you have Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, posting a fun video, as they put it. On the other hand, you have Democrats like Chris Van Hollen visiting to demand the release of these people who people like Kristi Noem wrongfully sent there. And so it's already this sort of gross kind of both sidesy thing of not saying both sides are to blame, just both sides are having fun campaigning here. They then say the El Salvador Supermax prison is becoming the new Ohio Diner. It's the new Iowa State Fair. It's the new Jeffrey Epstein jet. It's where every political leader needs to visit, the place to see and be seen if you're ambitious and in politics today. And lastly, I'll just read this final quote. Journalists will be hanging out at the prison to get everyman voices from the El Salvador Supermax. Lobbyists will be standing by the metal detectors, pollsters in the outdoor gym yard. A gorgeous steakhouse will open up in the nearby shantytown. I actually have no idea what's nearby the Supermax, but I assume it's a shantytown. And at the rate we're going, soon TGIF will be written from inside one of the cells. And so I just am not sure what the purpose of describing CECOT that way was. It was also interesting, you know, this was not something written in like decades ago. This was literally written months ago to make a joke about it being the Jeffrey Epstein jet, a place that all politicians, lobbyists, and journalists want to be at. Was a very interesting choice, no less because in the especially recent weeks that the Epstein Files have really been finally getting much of the coverage that it has warranted. So Bari Weiss has booked at least 2 high-profile Epstein friends / associates, one for CBS, one for the Free Press, and Steven Pinker and Alan Dershowitz. All while, again, she's running cover for perhaps the most infamous alleged Trump Epstein associate in Donald Trump. And of course, this is not to suggest that like Bari Weiss is part of this network that is protecting or friends with Jeffrey Epstein. It's more to just suggest this comfort with making these decisions in a way that seems to have no scruple or caution, while at the same time, there's so much caution, apparently, for a segment that has gone through repeated levels of legal and editorial review. That's the broader sort of issue where why would an editor-in-chief of a news outlet like CBS have so much comfort doing one thing and not the other? That's like the broader question of essence that I think is more interesting for people.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. And we're going to get to Epstein in 1 second, but I just want to show, speaking of Bari Weiss's being this intermediary. Okay, so here she is in an address to the, is this on stage? Yeah, in an address to the Federalist Society, the very conservative legal organization. And she said, in recognizing allies, hold on, make this bigger. In recognizing allies, I'll be an example. I am a gay woman who is moderately pro-choice. I know there are some in this room who do not believe my marriage should have been legal, and that's okay because we are all Americans who want lower taxes. But seriously, I'm here because I know that in the fight for the West, I know who my allies are. So here we see like 2 things happening. One is she's kind of staking out ground as a gay, you know, socially liberal person. But she still can work with these people because they both care about lower taxes and they both have a kind of racist project about saving the West from infidels or, oops, sorry about that. I thought
That's all right. No problem.
From infidels or invaders or whatever you want, whatever people would want to call people who are being, you know, beaten, tortured, detained, having their rights violated. But let's shift, because you made that really great point about Epstein and the kind of Epstein proximity. Let's shift into a recent piece that you wrote. Trumpland grades his Epstein cover-up an F-. So explain that, because I think that people won't know what that's in reference to, but it's a very provocative. Do we have that one here, Brad? Is this it? Bottom? Do we have this one ready to go or no? Just tell me either way. No. Okay. Let me just show this. Let me just do a screen share. Okay. Share screen. Okay, here we go. Okay. Great. Trumpland creates his Epstein cover-up an F-. They keep making it look like we have something to hide. A White House official complains to Zeteo, and you and Asawan and Andrew Perez co-wrote this article. So tell us about this and anything else you want to know about the recent Epstein revelations.
Yes. So as some of you may know, there's been a lot of developments in recent days with regards to the Epstein files. Some amounts of files being dumped and released, some kind of being inadvertently released or not properly redacted, such that people on Twitter, people in the media were able to actually get more out of these files than maybe the DOJ was accounting for. Just a lot of messiness. And also, I should add, some files that were published and then sort of rescinded by the Trump administration and the DOJ upon learning that some of them had Trump's name on them. A lot of messiness in the past 48, 72 hours with regard to the Epstein files. A lot of files that also suggest even more maybe eyebrow-raising directions and lines between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Maybe more times that Trump had actually been on Epstein's plane. An alleged rape allegation with regards to Donald Trump. And at the moment, a somewhat hairy possible letter from Jeffrey Epstein to Larry Nasser, of course, another infamous sex criminal, in which he allegedly, if the letter is real, which there is some disagreement about whether that's the case or not, Jeffrey Epstein complains to Nasser about the idea that both of them share this love for, I should get the quote right because it's quite horrible. Epstein says to Nasser, "Our president," in reference to what likely would have been Trump, "shares our love of young, nubile girls. When a young beauty walked by, he loved to," quote, he double quotes here, "grab snatch, whereas we ended up snatching grub in the mess halls of the system. Life is unfair." In this letter, Epstein also reportedly, if it is true, wrote, "As you know by now, I have taken the short route home. Good luck," perhaps in reference to perhaps him ending his life while he was in jail. In any case, a lot of very disturbing files in these releases, some of which also the DOJ is now pushing back on the validity of, which then raises the question of then why are you releasing these as part of this trove of files that are supposed to have relevancy to Jeffrey Epstein and his orbit of crime and perversion? Why would this false document also be in there? So all of that to say, between the rescinded documents, the messiness, the confusing statements, the documents that the DOJ says are fake, but we release them anyways, all of this messiness, a lot of people within Trump world are feeling a bit anxious about, because I think people are patently seeing that this is so incredibly messy. We had connected with over a dozen Trump land people, advisors, administration officials, Republican lawmakers, people in the right-wing media, other close allies of the president, to ask them to just grade the DOJ on their handling of all of this, the Epstein files, especially from the summer to now. All but one of this dozen plus people responded with an F or an F minus. One person went as far as to say F minus minus. And the reason they feel this way is because of three main reasons. One is that the way the administration has handled all of this has not only created this massive cloud of political scandal, but it's just fueled suspicions that Trump did something wrong. The second reason is the idea that the administration has conducted this weird cover-up in a manner that makes it look obvious that they're engaging in a cover-up, which obviously would make people more suspicious, such as, for example, again, rescinding files evidently because they had Trump's name on them. Finally, the third sort of grievance these Trump world people have is the sense that the Department of Justice latest attempts to kind of counteract the idea that they're doing a cover-up, such as this tweet today where they very ham-handedly insist Trump is innocent, only further destroys the idea that the Department of Justice is credible or independent from Trump. And so it's been remarkable, I know for many of you who have been watching, it's been so kind of weird because it's just been so, again, as I say, just ham-handed.
Right.
First release files, but all of them are redacted. Not all of them are even out. Both of those things are in violation of the Epstein Transparency Act that says all the files need to be released with as little redaction as possible, beyond, of course, protecting victims. And so after that, they begin sort of unredacting certain things. They release more files in the following days, but then rescind files. All of that is so blatantly suspicious to people in such a way that, again, people within the Trump world are just so beyond puzzled by what's going on, because it seems so not tactful or not driven by any sense of self-interest or coherency or
Right.
strategy at all.
Yeah. So apparently that there's evidence now that is fake, which is still relevant, right? Because what you're saying is, well, why
Yes.
would that be fake? Why would that be in there?
Right.
Which I think does beg a really important question.
Because then it's like, so what are people supposed to believe and not believe from these files?
Exactly.
And
then
also
they're
what
tainting the whole thing, right? As not credible.
Exactly. And then it's just a poison well. So then if there are credible things in there, well, it's like, we don't
Exactly.
know, because this thing that was meant to be the smoking gun was fake. So how can this other thing be real? And so the whole thing, if it was meant to be a Hail Mary just to make the whole thing less credible, and therefore people would not feel as sort of attached to the idea that maybe Trump is perhaps directly implicated in some way,
Right.
that still isn't working because it's just making everyone so suspicious. So they were in possibly between a rock and a hard place where either perhaps Trump, there is something very, very, very bad in there.
Right.
And then the other side of this is, well, we could just like make the whole thing, not credible. It seems to be that they're going for the latter. Whether the former is true or not, we're not sure. But of course, again, there already is a lot of evidence of just some very disturbing aspects of their relationship, including the birthday note that I know some of you might have forgotten already, but there's the creepy birthday note that Trump apparently signed where he talks about some very suspicious things he and Jeffrey Epstein have in common, a note that was written on what seemed to be the frame of a younger woman. I digress. The point being, they were stuck perhaps between either going down with whatever might be in the files or making the whole thing suspicious. They seem to be going with the latter, but that's not going well for them either.
Right. Wow. Well, Prem, you've been so generous with your time, and I know you're spending time or trying to spend time with your family. Anything else you want to make sure we know about? And I'll link to your wonderful writing because you're very prolific.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess one final thing I would add is, obviously, there's been so much news that's been happening all the time for months and months and months, years and years and years, of course, and all the more so, the more online we are. It's days and days and days into this alleged ceasefire and peace deal that the U.S. and Israel have been leading. It must be underscored and underlined, and it cannot be overstated. This is not a ceasefire. Palestinians are still being killed, harassed, tortured, brutalized, undignified every single day. There have been dozens, if not potentially hundreds, of violations of this supposed ceasefire, to the point that it's unclear to me why anyone in the media is calling it a ceasefire. There's no testing of a ceasefire that's still happening. There is no ceasefire. Firing is happening. Nothing has ceased. Maybe it's a little less loud now, but the devastation is still happening. So I would just insist once again that we remember that there is a lot of horrors happening in Palestine, and let's just make sure that we're staying attuned to what's going on there as well.
Yeah, actually, that's perfect, because I want to read a comment from the great Anthony Aguilar, who is Tony Aguilar, the Green Beret, who blew the whistle on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or as Aaron Mate calls it, the Gaza Holocaust Foundation. He writes, "Keep the truth alive. Israel, Trump, Bari Weiss, Kushner, and the elites do not care about us." I believe this means $112 billion US dollar Riviera. Project Sunrise is real. It's been planned since 2021. Never forget Amir, killed on May 28, 2025 at the Rafah GHF site. And again, Anthony witnessed this, spoke out against this, paid quite a cost, although I know he's the first to say that the cost he paid is nothing compared to the people of Gaza. And Prem, you were so fearless and consistent in your questioning about the murder of Hind Rajab. Do you have any updates with that in terms of accountability? And she's the 6-year-old who was killed as she was begging for help from the Red Crescent. And after killing her family, the IDF then blew up the car, shot up the car that she was in.
Yes. So we had, as you mentioned, asked the Biden administration over and over and over again about any updates into the investigation of the killing of Hind Rajab and the medics that were sent to save her, as well as her family members. The Biden administration never gave us an update. There was a pile of humanitarian violations that they had that they were going through in the State Department, apparently. It's unclear if that stack of documents ever made it to the Trump administration, or if they doged it like they got rid of pretty much everything else in government. And of course, the current Trump-Vance-Rubio State Department is not holding any press briefings for us to even question them at all. The so-called free speech, independent thinking, anti-war administration won't even answer our questions on any of the wars that they're complicit in, or in fact, I should say the genocides they're complicit in. And so that's something else that I would hope people keep in mind, that it's been more than 3, if not maybe 4 months since we've been allowed to ask the State Department in a public setting any question about any of their foreign policy decision making. I guess one final thing I'll just end on, so it's not as bleak, is that it's the holiday season. It's a time that is both beautiful and sometimes very difficult for many of us. I just want to share my love and grace and good spirits with all of you. I know it is very hard sometimes to always be so attuned to the horrors in our world, and also for many of us to be subject to different versions of them as well. But there's a lot of camaraderie and community that we can have and do have, and that's really beautiful. And I think as much as the horrors make it easier for you to exit, to depart, to reject, that's the first thing they want out of us, that the first thing they want out of you. And if there's one thing I've seen from our coverage, the community that you know we're a part of, Katie, that everyone watching is a part of, is that there's so much good here too. And it's incumbent upon us, if nothing else, to honor all that good that's in a lot of people around us, because what is life for if not honoring that good and that light and spreading that light and lighting other people's torches too. So I'm wishing all of you guys a happy holiday, happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you happen to be celebrating. And, and just try to recharge, take care of yourselves, and take care of the people around you. Just sharing my best with you guys.
Thank you so much. That is actually incredibly, you don't even know how much that resonates with me and a lot of my friends right now. And it is true that we have to be there for each other. We have to counter this evil with the light, as you said. And, we have to honor those who have left us by fighting the good fight that they wanted us to fight, that they were fighting, and that they, in many ways, compelled us to keep going with. Thank you, Prem. That was really, really moving. And thank you so much.
Thank you all. Take care, everyone.
Bye. You too. Okay, that was beautiful. What a good person is. Not everyone, there are a lot of people who are good writers, good journalists. They're nice enough, but Prem is a very special person. And I know it's corny maybe to say that, but I don't care, because we are living in hard times and we do have to be very nice to each other, be supportive. Call your friends, text your friends, ask them if everything's okay. If you need support, reach out. So urging it in both directions. If you can support someone, support someone. If you feel like you need support, ask for that support. And if you're feeling down and lonely, go to an animal shelter and volunteer, or wherever you can volunteer with animals, because that really helps with depression, apparently. Or volunteer at a tutor kids. There's so much that you can do that is not only good for the world, but actually makes you happy. And there are all these studies on this. And homeless people who have dogs actually live longer. But we'll do another show on this at another point. Although, a cool thing, Glenn Greenwald, former colleague of Prem's, because they were both, of course, at the Intercept, he does have a dog shelter that employs homeless people, that employs the unhoused. So things like that are very encouraging. And I just know that people do struggle during the holidays. Those are really hard times. So reach out and don't despair and go volunteer somewhere. Okay. So I'm going to just, there's no real logical segue between that and this, although someone who is not losing despair, I'll say that, is Imran Khan, despite the fact that he is imprisoned. He was just sentenced. And we started covering this very important Pakistan story. And I got to say, we have only done a few shows on it, but it's like the outpouring of excitement and support is so remarkable, which just speaks to how much this story is ignored. So we're going to bring back onto the show Moeed Pirzada, who is a British-Pakistani geo-strategic analyst, television anchor, and columnist and commentator who's been living in exile in Washington, D.C. since the regime change in Pakistan 3 years ago. He's interviewed people like Imran Khan, David Cameron. And just a heads up, we will be doing another live stream on Friday. We'll give you details about the time, but we will be covering Pakistan once again. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Moeed Pirzada.
Katie, thank you. I hope you can hear me loudly.
Yes, we can hear you. Yep, we can hear you. Thank you so much for coming back on.
I must appreciate, first of all, this was a very moving discussion you had with Prem. I was listening. And you are focusing, you're doing a great job in focusing at various conflict zones across the world, which are being ignored, and Pakistan is one of them, which is not a story here in this country.
Right. It's funny. It's like you, so many people have reached out to me because, again, so few people cover this. So, and thank you for bringing attention to this. So people heard you on last time. Again, you had to flee Pakistan yourself. Tell us what happened since the last time that you were on, because we interviewed you a few weeks ago, but then I did an additional live stream on Friday with Alima Khan, the sister of Alima Khan. She was telling us about the conditions in which he was being treated. And since then, on Saturday, Imran Khan, along with his wife Bushra Bibi, was sentenced to 17 years. And the official line is that they stole gifts and refused to return state gifts. Talk about what they were sentenced with, and what the atmosphere now in Pakistan is. I know you're not there, but
Katie, there's so many questions put together. First of all, I watched the discussion you had with Alima Khan, Imran Khan's sister, after a government spokesman appeared in Yalda Hakim's discussion in Sky, and that was a very good discussion. But let me update you that on Tuesday, the day that ended, because Pakistan is 10 hours ahead of United States in time, the day that ended, Alima and her sisters, Uzma and Noreen, have again tried meeting Imran Khan as per the court instructions on Tuesday, because as per the High Court orders, the family can meet Imran Khan on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right.
And once again, like the past several weeks, Alima and the sisters have been denied. They left in very late in the night. They were not allowed to meet Imran Khan. So what you focused on Alima's discussion after Yalda Hakim's discussion in Sky, where a government spokesperson kept on misinforming the public, citing some 870 meetings with Imran Khan.
Right.
This is total bullshit, You see, the several weeks have passed. Alima and the sisters and Imran Khan's party people, the lawyers, have not been allowed to meet Imran Khan. And as Alima told you in her discussion, when you talked to her, that there have never been unique meetings. People are given 45 minutes or 40 minutes, and 6 people or 7 people or 8 people, including the lawyers. And Imran Khan is someone who has more than 200 cases against him. So, of course, he has to talk to his lawyers and give them instructions as well. He has to meet his party people and the family. And his sons have not been allowed to talk to him on phone for the past several months, probably. So that is what is one aspect of the situation. Now, coming to this case, it is not only just that Imran and the wife Bushra Bibi have been given the 17-year imprisonment. According to the government statement, it is not simultaneous. It's actually consequent, these punishments, because Imran already had a 14-year punishment in the previous case. So according to one spokesman, I heard him, the punishments against Imran have reached more than 100 years. If you keep on accumulating them, these are not just 14 years or 17 years. These are all consequent to each other. That one punishment ends and the other punishment starts. So this is what the situation regarding Imran Khan is. But then it is not only about Imran Khan. It is also about the country. When the government spokesman you mentioned and you heard on Sky with Yalda, I know him personally. He's a very intelligent man, very well-spoken man. When people, intelligent, well-spoken men, are compelled to represent military authoritarianism, that actually gives you an idea of the state of affairs in a country. And this state of affairs in country of military authoritarianism is supported by United States, by its Department of State, by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the CENTCOM, and by President of United States, who just on Monday once again praised Pakistan's army dictator general by saying that he is a very respectable general who praises me. So this is where we stand at the moment.
Right, yeah. And that, of course, was Yalda Hakim on Sky News, and it was Mubashir Zaidi, Mubashir Zaidi, who was saying really disgusting.
Musharraf Zaidi.
Oh, okay. Musharraf Zaidi, yeah. Who was the guy who I pointed out sounded like Netanyahu and also Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL. Just a really obnoxious, cloying, condescending, disingenuous, unctuous interview. And she had a great response to that, where she was basically saying, like, wow, I'm embarrassed for him. He should go home. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But a lot of double talk and a lot of obfuscation. And so we can link to that interview. But so that is interesting because I don't think that that's being reported on that much, that it's not just 17 years, like that these are consequential, what's the word? Consecutive upon each other. Sentences. Yeah. Wow. And what is the atmosphere like right now there? Because how are people reacting to this? Because there were protests in the street that Alima was telling us about. We showed some videos of those.
Yes, that's true. Katie, it's very difficult to inform the people as to what kind of climate of fear exists in Pakistan because of the repeated crackdowns on the people. When people come out peacefully to protest, on 26 November 2024, there was a massacre in Islamabad. It was not only a massacre and a crackdown. The audacity of it was that it was actually done right very close, within 1 kilometer of the crow flight of Pakistan's Supreme Court, Pakistani Parliament, Pakistani Senate, Pakistan's the Prime Minister's office, and also very close to the diplomatic enclave, where all the important embassies of United States and Britain and European Union are located. And there has been no condemnation of that massacre. So you can understand that when these crackdowns remain unnoticed, they are not condemned by European Union, by Britain, by United States, apart from occasional voices from United Nations, these massacres have not been condemned. So this adds and fuels to the climate of fear, helplessness and despondency that exist in Pakistan. So yes, there have been protests, but not very big protests even after the Imran Khan's punishment. The protests are now becoming smaller and smaller. You know, I'm a media person, I'm an analyst, I'm not a political activist, so I have to describe it accurately. So 2 years ago or 1 year ago, the size of the protests were much larger, but now people feel helpless and they feel very disappointed.
Right. And just for people who are just turning in, how would you summarize what the government is claiming the reason that they are imprisoning Imran Khan is, and what you think the real reason is?
You see, of course, the government reason is this, that Imran Khan has done the corruption. Imran Khan and his wife have actually taken an expensive jewelry on prices much less than what they should have been, the market prices. But these are not the real reasons. First of all, what is being claimed by the government is a government facility called Tosha Khana in Pakistan, where when government officials, the prime ministers, the ministers, or the army officers, they travel abroad to Middle East and different countries, they receive expensive gifts. This is mostly in the Middle Eastern culture. And the Pakistani government had a law that is more than 50 years old, that you can pay a price, probably 10% of the registered price, the recommended price, and you can take those gifts for personal use. So everybody has been taking them. In fact, the difference is this, that in Imran Khan's case, the prices were raised. He decided to that the Tosha Khana prices, the state prices, should be much higher. And he has paid the price and actually taken that jewelry. But now they have actually brought some fake evidences by saying that Imran Khan impressed upon or influenced someone, the appraiser, to fix a lower price. But that's actually all totally nonsensical. The reason over here is totally political. The cases against Imran Khan were also for marrying his wife, Bushra Bibi, illegally against the principles of Islam. Where in the world can you actually bring a case against a man who's 70 years of age and a woman who's 50 years of age, that they have married against some sort of religious injunctions? I mean, only in the way the things are in Pakistan, you can bring such a stupid case. So all the cases against Imran Khan are politically motivated because he's very popular. In the last election of 8 February 2024, he won single-handedly, sitting from jail, more than 70% of the popular vote, as per the exit polls that were coming before midnight. So the goal over here by the military regime is to keep him in prison, or in one pretext or the other pretext. They keep on bringing new cases and they control the courts.
Right. Someone actually wrote a comment that I just want to read. Let's see. Dania Adnan, all at the behest of the Brad, can you mute Moeed, because there's an echo? So I'm going to read the comment. Just mute him while I read that. At the behest of the U.S., all will be forgiven if the no confidence vote against Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan succeeds. U.S. Pakistani generals are entirely subservient to the U.S. Reading the NSS, the U.S. is out for war. Khan is peace. They'll never let me out.
This is an old comment, because when you look at all at the behest of the US, this comment must have been written somewhere around in March or April, in March of 2022, because this comment is in the context of when a no confidence motion was being brought against Imran Khan. And the writer is saying that all will be forgiven if the no confidence vote against the Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan succeeds. US Pakistan generals are entirely subservient. She's referring to a Department of State functionary who made that comment on 7th March to then Pakistan's ambassador Asad Majeed in Washington in the meeting, that all will be forgiven if the no confidence move against Imran Khan succeed. This is what she's referring to.
Okay, got it. So also, Nate, did you give Brad the video that we want to show? Brad, do you have that video?
I gave him the headline. I gave him the link.
Oh, okay.
Headline.
Okay,
So,
but we also have a video.
Which he has already showed. But
right.
There was the president speaking at Mar-a-Lago when new naval ships, he announced new naval ships, and surprisingly, for the first time in the US history, he has named the naval ships as the Trump class. It's usually for a privilege reserved for presidents who have gone or probably died. But it is then that the President Trump was speaking, and we referred to the Pakistani general as a very respectable general. And every time when Trump speaks like this, it enhances the political power of the Pakistani military within Pakistan to coerce the people. This is what the tragedy is.
Okay, got it. But we do, I believe, have a little video. Can you play that one, Brad?
And the talks are going along. And I say that, there's tremendous hatred between these. Think of it, we stopped a potential nuclear war between Pakistan and India. And the head of Pakistan, highly respected general, he's a field marshal. And also the Prime Minister of Pakistan said, President Trump saved 10 million lives, maybe more, by getting that war. 8 planes were shot down. That war was starting to rage. And he actually said the other day that President Trump saved 10 million lives, maybe more.
So what are your thoughts on that?
It's actually funny, first of all, look at this, how President Trump has referred to the Pakistan's military chief and the army chief. He refers to him as head of the Pakistan. I mean, President Trump is so disconnected with the actual ground reality that he's referring to a serving army general as head of Pakistan. And he first mentions the general, and then he mentions the prime minister, because he also understands that the prime minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, is totally irrelevant. So this is what Trump understands. This is why he refers to the general first of all. And the prime minister has actually been created by the general, because the elections on 8 February 2024 were totally rigged. So, but every time when president makes this kind of reference, he further empowers General Asim Munir's hold on Pakistani politics. Also, he keeps on increasing the number of the planes. The actual planes that were shot on 7th May 2025 were only 5. The India lost 5 planes because Pakistani military, Pakistani Air Force had the support of the Chinese military-grade satellites that were feeding them the information, and the Indians were not aware that the Pakistanis could look at a very far-off, horizon. But the planes were only 5, and there was 1 drone. So then President started saying there were 6 planes down, then 7 planes down, and now he has increased the number to 8 planes. This is very surprising that someone in a position of responsibility as a president of the United States, POTUS is actually playing with the numbers in such a fashion. But why he's actually saying it? The question that was asked to him was that what happened of the peace he had promised between Ukraine and Russia. And he says they hate each other. I mean, he accepts, right. He admits that it has not been a success. Then in order to bolster his standing as a peacemaker, he brings that he has finished, ended resolving 8 wars, and then he hops on to Pakistan. This is what the context is. But it's really helping the Pakistani military.
Right. And this is him, right? Munir?
Exactly. This is General Asim Munir. Yes.
And just to clarify, so you have this field marshal, and then you have a prime minister, right? So Zeteo is a spokesperson for the prime minister. How do they share power?
You see, all power, for all practical purposes, all power in Pakistan is controlled by General Asim Munir, who has managed to declare himself the field marshal after this 3 to 4 days war with India, despite the fact that the war was only fought between the air forces of India and Pakistan's ground forces and military had no role in the war. But since General was politically powerful and he controlled the civilian government which exists at his behest, he managed to declare himself the field marshal. No one has declared him the field marshal. There has not been a legitimate government to give him the award of the field marshal, as happens anywhere in the world. He has himself declared himself field marshal. But not only this, he has been able to bring 2 constitutional amendments with a government which he has created through a rigged election. He has now totally changed the structure form of the Pakistani constitution, first by the 26th Amendment in 2024, and now recently in November, he's been able to bring a 27th constitutional amendment. And as a result of the 27th constitutional amendment, he has now made himself chief of the defense staff forces. That means he now controls the Air Force, he now controls the Navy, he now controls the nuclear command of Pakistan, the cyber forces and everything. And all that is happening and being ignored by United States. This is funny, the way things are going in Pakistan.
Yeah, that is interesting and disturbing. And thank you for coming on. Anything else that you want to make sure that you mention? And we'll definitely bring you back on. And we're having someone on, Hassan Ali who writes for The Nation, who was actually beaten up by I guess the police or the army when he was covering a pro-Khan protest.
Katie, I just want to add this thing. First of all, that you're doing a very good job because in United States, there is very little understanding, if any, what is happening in Pakistan. So you're focusing on a very important issue. And as I had mentioned in my last discussion with you a few weeks ago, that Pakistan is the 5th largest nation state in the world with more than 250 million population. You can imagine the size of Pakistan by imagining that United States is a total population slightly in excess of 350 million. And Pakistan is 250 million plus. So it's a very large nation state that has many sub-states and sub-nations inside it. Secondly, it's the 2nd largest Muslim nation on the planet, which has huge human resources in the form of a large army, a large bureaucracy, a large civil society, and academia. I mean, just look at the size that Pakistan has. More than 20,000 trained physicians of Pakistani origins that are serving the American communities all across the United States. And similarly, they are in Canada. They are perhaps the largest group of physicians, of the foreign trained physicians in United Kingdom. And the same is the situation worldwide, the Pakistani diaspora. But this country is being run by a brutal military authoritarianism supported by United States. That is what the tragedy is. And that awareness has to be raised by people like yourself and the others.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by, and we will have you back on soon, and we will keep covering this. And again, I'll update people at the exact time, but we will have Hassan Ali from The Nation, who actually will be joining us from Pakistan, where he is from and where he's based. So really looking forward to that.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, well, by the way, where are we on likes? Do I have to yell at everyone to make sure that they like this stream? Let's see. On vertical, what do we got? And thank you. Thank you so much to all the people watching. Thank you so much to Moeed for that fascinating and very important update. We have good numbers of likes on the vertical. Let's see how we're doing. Oh, that could be good. We could do like a competition, see who's doing better, the verticals or the horizontals. Okay, pretty good. Both of you guys are doing a pretty good job. But if you haven't already liked, please do like the stream. Again, it's a great way to support the show for free. Please do become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. We will probably have to make part of the Prem Thakker conversation Patreon only, because we will get probably the CBS video will get us removed. So to do that, go to patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Now, Brad, is our next guest ready? Oh, I just see that maybe not. Huh, interesting. 1 second. If not, what can we do to show something? You want to call him, Brad, or I even told him the time would be more or less this. ETA 8:20. And I was told, okay, here he is. All right, great. So our last guest, but certainly not least, because tonight's show had such a great roster of guests, we are bringing back onto the show Russ Dobular from Due Dissidence. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. You?
Very good. What's going on?
Not much. It was fun watching you and Keaton stream today. He's not here, not because he's a misogynist, which I joked about earlier. He's the opposite of that. He has familial obligations. He's being a woke man, a good ally, a feminist ally.
He didn't want to end up living in the motel down by the highway. So he could not take tonight away from the family.
Yeah. But we will have him back on. There is so much to talk about. I think we should get into some Bari Weiss stuff. What do you think?
Sure. Whatever you want.
Okay. Well, people may know about this or they may not know about this, but Bari Weiss, as was mentioned earlier in our Prem Thakker segment, she was a really outspoken voice in trying to get people at Columbia fired over being critics of Israel, including the great Professor Joseph Massad, who was a kind of studied with Edward Said, someone else who they vilify. And I actually want to take a look at the at part of the documentary that was made. Then we'll see her commenting on it. But there was this documentary released in 2004 about the supposed anti-Semitism at Columbia. It's called Columbia Unbecoming. And so let's take a look at some of this really great documentary.
I took a class with George Saliba, The Introduction to Islamic Civilization. Towards the end of the semester, Professor Saliba showed what I felt was an anti-Israel film, showing the contemporary conflict between Palestinians and Israelis, with a very one-sided view. The film and Saliba presented a view that Arabs have a prior claim to the land of Israel. And I felt very differently about that, and I was sure to express my opinion. For a few minutes, we discussed it inside the classroom.
By the way, is this like a thing, like Mayim Bialik? Is this like a Zionist hat? Remember Mayim Bialik as Blossom wore a hat like this? I guess a much more effective hat, but yeah.
Yeah,
it's
definitely a look.
Yeah, it's definitely a look.
I was sure to express my opinion. For a few minutes, we discussed it inside the classroom, and then George Saliba sort of drew me outside the classroom and told me to walk with him on his way out. And on our way out, we actually stood on College Walk right outside for 45 minutes, where I debated with him about the fact that the Jewish people have been in Israel for thousands of years. He said, you have no voice in this debate. So I said, of course I'm allowed to express, my opinion, he said. Came real close to me, and he moved down his glasses, and he looked right into my eyes, and he said, see, you have green eyes. He said, you're not a Semite. He said, I'm a Semite. I have brown eyes. He said, you have no claim to the land of Israel. As if my ancestors were not there, as if I'm not really a Jew because I have green eyes. I was stunned and never approached him after that, and that's exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to intimidate me and keep me quiet. And I was. I'm an alumna, and now I'm sort of removed from the incident. I'm not afraid of Saliba anymore, and it's all about the intimidation factor.
I love this. So the people who are really intimidated are people like Schreier, this woman Schreier. It's not Lindsay Schreier, not the people who get doxxed, who get fired. She, by the way, works, I believe, in what does she do? Burkhoff Financial. She's a financial advisor. Here, let me show you.
I was just wondering, what is she doing today? Is she
Okay, let's take a look.
Executive
Hold on a
assistant
second.
at the JDL. What is she doing?
Okay, here she is. Let me just show you who she is. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Let me zoom in on this. Okay, Lindsay Schreier Burkhoff, CFP, Partner Director of Financial Planning, Schreier Wealth Management. Okay, she's based in LA. She's a certified financial planner, professional member of the Financial Planning Association, serving clients at Schreier Wealth Management in Los Angeles, California, and the surrounding community. I mean, no wonder she's not going to be intimidated. I don't think she's very vulnerable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She parlayed the connection she got from this into a nice bag of gelt there.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. So she began her career at JP Morgan. Before that, she was at Bear Stearns and Co. and Citibank Private Bank. Yeah, right. She
Yeah.
this is funny.
Nice that she did something worthwhile with her life.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I like that her specialties include getting divorced. I mean, I'm not mocking divorce,
illegal
that's funny.
settlements.
Yeah, right, exactly. Getting divorcing Palestinians from their land, perhaps. Yeah.
House theft.
Asset allocation, that's a way of putting it, right? Estate planning, that's a good way of describing settlers, perhaps, what they leave their people. Retirement.
Yeah, well, this was I was looking at some of the background on this. This film was the result of a harassment campaign that these Jewish organizations had been building and
Right.
mounting against these professors over the course of a couple of years, with the local rabbi, the Jewish Theological Seminary, which is right across the street there from Columbia. It's right nearby by Riverside Church. Were building this pressure on them until they were getting all of these students who were clearly agitators, who would just go into the class as adjudicators
Right.
and make it impossible to teach the class.
Adjudicators. Really?
Well,
Yeah.
oh yeah, with the Jew and jewelry.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
They were going in and making it like impossible for them to teach the classes. And then finally they got offered funding to make a propaganda film, which if you watch this film, it's very, this is why Max Blumenthal, he coined the phrase Ziontology. They're very much like Scientologists. They subscribe to the Scientology principle of fair game. The idea that if someone is an opponent, anything is fair game. You can do anything to them. You can lie about them. You can frame them. You can do anything. They're fair game if they're an opponent of Scientology. Zionists very much have that mindset because multiple investigations of these professors showed that these claims were not true, that actually these professors were being harassed by a coordinated, targeted effort of these students working with a Zionist organizations to intimidate and harass them and force them out of their teaching positions. But if you didn't know any of that and you just watch this, yeah, it sounds terrible. God, these students are being exposed to these horrible extremists, and that's the purpose of it. And they are lying, and they know they're lying. That's fair game. That's fair game. They're Ziontologists. If it's in the interests of Zionism, you're under no obligation to use fair tactics.
Right. Yeah, they are. It's like holy war, but it's secular. I mean, let's not pretend that we don't want to pretend that this is a religious conflict, which is something that Zionists like to claim. Here, by the way,
they switch their claims based on what's convenient to their argument.
So here, I just wanted to show actually the response from said professor who, I guess, half traumatized Schreier, but half also taught her not to be intimidated because it's an intimidation game. After receiving the transcript of the film through the courtesy of the New York Sun, I read the statements of a Ms. Lindsay Schreier in which she refers to a 45-minute conversation she claims I had with her outside of class on College Walk a few years back. Since I must have talked to hundreds of students since then, I can assure you that I have no memory of the student in question, nor of the conversation that she claims took place. The statements that she attributes to me in the transcript, marked between quotations, are blatantly false, and I can say in good conscience and categorically that I would not have used such phrases. then he says, at the same time, I do not accuse the student of fabricating this conversation either, since I've checked my records and realized that I thought very highly of the student when she took my course in the fall of 2001, and both my TA and I have graded her accordingly without any prejudice whatsoever. I think Ms. Schreier knows that, and she can publish the grade if she thinks it's prejudicial. I only think that quoting an argument from memory going back a few years may have fogged the mind of that student. And now, under ideological pressures, she could no longer remember correctly what words and phrases were used. After all, I myself forgot the whole argument altogether. Altogether. What seems to have happened is probably a misquotation of an argument I sometimes make and may have made then. The gist of it would be to say that being born in a specific religion or converting to one is not the same as inheriting the color of one's eyes from one's parents, and thus does not produce evidence of land ownership of a specific real estate. I may have added that if I converted to Catholicism tomorrow, I would not expect the Pope to grant me a piece of the Vatican real estate. And then actually he gets into the we might as well go full. Let's continue. Because it's interesting, right? On the issue of the biblical claim to land ownership in Palestine, it is possible that I said my own great ancestors, the Canaanites, were the original inhabitants of the land before it was promised away to the patriarch Abraham, and they had more legal claim to that same land than any descendant from Abraham. After all, Abraham was a, quote, stranger and a sojourner in my neighborhood, as the Bible says, and was decent enough to buy the grave lot for his wife instead of taking it by force. That decency may have earned him the good points with Melchizedek, another ancestor of mine, I presume. I may have also said that we should not forget the claims of Ishmael, the firstborn of Abraham, who was not treated fairly by our modern day standards, nor was his poor mother Hagar. So that's, I think, a fascinating response. And yeah, we also have video of Bari Weiss talking about said intimidation and the scourge of anti-Semitism. Let's take a look at that.
Or experienced anything like it, and I saw stories of students just like me. One of them, and for those of you who followed this story back in 2003 and 2004, you'll remember some of these, but for those of you who haven't, please bear with me. So one of them was an Israeli student who I knew named Tommy Schoenfeld, and he's a former Israeli soldier, extremely left-wing. He went to a lecture put on by a now infamous professor named Joseph Massad. And at the end of the lecture, Tommy raised his hand to ask the professor a question. And Professor Joseph Massad responded and said, "Are you Israeli? I hear an accent." And Tommy said, "Yes, I'm Israeli." And Professor Massad replied, "You're Israeli, that means you served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces." And Tommy said, "Yes." And Professor Massad then replied, "Why don't you tell everyone here how many Palestinians you killed?" At which point the room absolutely erupted into chaos. That was one incident. This shouldn't be surprising from a professor who, by the way, is now tenured and claims that the ultimate achievement of Israel is the transformation of the Jew into the anti-Semite and the Palestinian into the Jew.
Yeah, that tracks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a disqualifying argument, or like, you shouldn't be surprised by someone who makes a very clever, a very insightful, astute argument.
Another incident from the film, another totally apolitical student named Dina Shankar, who was in a class also with Massad, who brought up the Jenin massacre. And she raised her hand and noted the fact that even the UN had dismissed the idea that a massacre had occurred in Jenin. And he responded in front of a very large lecture hall, "Anyone who will sit through my class and deny Israeli atrocities can get out of my classroom," and demanded that she leave. George Saliba, another tenured professor, told a student that because she had green eyes, she had no claim to the land of Israel. So what this film showed so powerfully to me, as a sophomore, again, not involved in politics, is that beyond these individual incidents of bullying, was that 30 years since Edward Said published his book Orientalism, there wasn't one professor in the Middle East Studies department who didn't buy into his theory of the Middle East. So you have this environment of incredible intellectual orthodoxy in which Zionism is racism. And no one likes racists, so it follows logically from that that you'd want to ostracize the racists in your midst, and that's what was happening in a lot of these classes.
No one likes racists, so they're using that to make the false argument that there's anything racist about Zionism, I guess, is what Barry would say.
Yeah, well, Zionism is all over the place. That's why I say, what they argue depends on what's convenient to the ground that they're arguing on. If you look at the early Zionists, they argued all over the place. They were secular, so they didn't like a religious claim, but at the same time, the idea that this diaspora was a people was just not true. So they kind of needed to go back to the religious claim in order to create a monoculture or a cohesive culture that would be persuasive to Jews who mostly thought this was a crackpot scheme at the time. So they wouldn't. Today, we think of Judaism, we think of the Old Testament as being central. That wasn't the case at the time. The focus was much more on the Torah, on the Talmud, and studying that and debating that. Like the Old Testament was more of a sideshow until the Zionists made it central to establishing Jewish identity, which also, of course, required claiming a historicity to the Old Testament that the archaeology does not support. And as time went on, they started to not talk about that archaeology a lot in the Hebrew University and in academia in Israel. Very little has been published about that after the 50s because the archaeology just doesn't back it up. So then you're going to fall back on arguing that it's a race, which they did. They started making arguments that were ironically very similar to Hitler's arguments that Jews were a race. So it really depends on what you're talking about. I think Ilan Pappé said it best. Most Israelis are secular, but they all believe God promised them Palestine. The whole claim to that land is inherent. And I've seen Zionists, if you press them enough on, you really believe you're genetically descended from the original Hebrews. If you press them enough on that, some of them will then fall back on, well, it's a culture. And the culture has always been there. They'll argue any side of it once you've eliminated one line of argument.
That's interesting. I mean, not to make this all about myself, but to me, it's very easy to make the argument. I think you and I have talked about this. Like I would say I come from a particular Ashkenazi culture, and that doesn't give me any claim to Israel, right? Like that's not a difficult thing to hold. It gives me a claim to the Upper West Side and Zabar's or something, not to Israel.
I mean, do Buddhists have a claim to northern India? It's where the Buddha first preached, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean they can go kill everybody there or take northern India? It's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I only recently learned this. I read The Invention of the Jewish People.
Oh yeah, by
Shlomo Sand.
Yeah.
We tend to think that the Jews have always been inward looking, that they have not been a proselytizing, but they were. They actually were a proselytizing religion for several centuries. So you did have all of these Jewish communities around the Mediterranean of converts who would not have been descended from those original Hebrews, if that's something that's really important to you, that having that link. They stopped converting people to Judaism because it became illegal after Constantine made Christianity the official religion. On penalty of death, you couldn't convert people. So then they turned inward at that point. But for several centuries, they were a proselytizing religion. So by the time they stopped doing that, in all likelihood, most of the Jewish population around the Mediterranean area would have been converts or descendants of converts.
Right. Yeah. That is really fascinating because even I used to think it's different being a Jew. It is a smaller population. And again, I don't care because I'm not a Zionist, but it just happens to be because because Jews don't proselytize. But there was a large period of time when they did. They also did an interesting genetic test that reveals that many more people who are Jewish had at one point had like non-Jewish moms. There were more Europeans in the mix than they had thought.
And they're also, insofar as there's a relationship between Ashkenazi Jews and people who live in that region, they're more closely related to the Kurds than they are related to any kind of historical Middle Eastern people, which, you know, reinforces the notion that really we're Khazarians. We come off of that Middle Ages Khazarian Hebrew kingdom around Ukraine and parts of Russia.
Right. Chazarai means pig, I believe. So that's an unfortunate.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well,
think so, was it?
Khazar.
Khazar, yeah, right.
Yeah. They used to have downtown the push cart sellers on the old Lower East Side.
Yeah.
They called it the Khazar Mark, the pig market.
Right. Yeah. Someone actually asked what Judaism means to us, but I would actually, I mean, Judaism is something that I don't feel connected. I mean, not to sound, I feel connected to a Jewish culture, but not Judaism, even though obviously that is like, ironically, that's kind of the tie that binds historically. But there's such a culture of secular Jews, and that's the one that I identify with. But I'm actually curious, but you can answer that, and then I want to ask you about your own journey from to being an anti-Zionist. Were you ever a Zionist? If so, how did you escape it?
Oh, I've never told you a story. Yeah, they kicked me out of Hebrew school when I was 9.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, they you know, all of this. I think it's because I grew up in a Catholic neighborhood. I had an outside perspective on it. So the brainwashing just didn't take, especially because so much of it was centered like Hebrew school. I keep meaning
And
to do
sorry,
this.
what neighborhood was this?
I grew up in Flushing.
Queens, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And back then, I always say, you know, we were the grandchildren of Ellis Island, really. So my neighborhood was Irish, Italian, predominantly, with some Jews. There were some Jews, but mostly Irish and Italian. But it was, I keep meaning to do this research. I really would like to know the genesis of the Hebrew school system, because my experience of it is it's not Hebrew school, it's Zionist school. That's what it is. So it was a lot of drilling down the idea that my homeland is Israel and that we're waiting for the Messiah to come. So we return to Israel. So they asked me, you know, they were talking about how, you know, we're all going to go back to Israel when the Messiah comes. And I raised my hand. I said, what if you don't want to go to Israel? And they were like, well, no, because the Messiah will come and he'll lead all the Jewish boys and girls back to Israel. I said, I don't want to go to Israel. They said, fine, Russell, you can stay. Everybody else will go to Israel.
That's hilarious, yeah.
So it just didn't take for me.
They said you can stay, but then they didn't actually let you stay in the Hebrew school.
Yeah, I mean, eventually they kicked me out because I was the kind of kid. I'm almost still like this today. Like, you know, you cannot keep me in a place I don't want to be. I will make you so fucking miserable that you're gonna wish you. Sorry, I don't know how loose your standards are here.
Yeah,
we roll pretty rough over
yeah.
there. Yeah. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought because
No, it's okay. I was saying that they said you can stay, you don't have to go to Israel, but then I said, except ironically, they didn't let you stay in the Hebrew school.
Well, because yeah. I was so disruptive that eventually they just told my mom, who was very upset about it, like, yeah, that's not going to happen. They, at her insistence, I got bar mitzvahed, but I had no idea what I was saying.
Right.
Like, they gave me a tape, I memorized the tape, and I did the bar mitzvah. But yeah, I think that is, I think that's partly that my friends were all Catholic. So telling me I'm primarily Jewish And I'm sorry, man. I mean, there is definitely a certain inherent racism to that whole thing, to that whole perspective. Like those people are lesser.
Right.
They're not the chosen people, right? So for me, these are my friends.
Right.
So what are you telling me? That my friends are less than me because they're not Jewish and the Messiah is not going to come for them and I'm going to go to Israel, I'm going to leave them here. So even as a child, it just didn't sit well with me.
And
Um
what about your
yeah, go ahead.
parents?
Um y- my mother believed the way that most people who believe in religion believe, like they don't think about it a lot. Like most people don't really delve that into it. It's the way they were raised, so it's what they do. She wasn't fanatical. She would go to the temple on the high holy days. I know your parents weren't religious, so you didn't grow up with any of that. My grandparents did, like my grandmother separated the plates. She did do that, but they
Oh,
weren't.
the kosher ones?
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, you're not supposed to have milk with meat.
Right.
So that extends to the dishware. You're supposed to have separate plates for dairy products. That's why you have Jewish dairy restaurants, specifically dairy restaurants.
Yeah.
So they did that, but they weren't orthodox.
Yeah.
They were like technically our family was conservative. We weren't reformed.
So
Uh,
but she knew how to keep a kosher home, kosher kitchen, as they say?
Yeah, but she didn't. Like I don't know how it happened. I don't know how I wound up having bacon, but I but I liked it.
Yeah.
So she would make me bacon. Like she
Oh, wow.
wasn't she wa and you know what? We used to go to the Chinese restaurant, but that's like a cliche. Like,
Yeah.
they're kosher until they go to the Chinese restaurant.
Right.
There's like this Chinese restaurant magic rabbinical loophole. You
Right.
can eat what you want in a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they weren't like crazy strict, but this is one of the tragedies, I think, of Zionism. For most Jews, I wish this was not true. I wish I could say this was not true. For most Jews, Zionism and Judaism at this point is inseparable in their mind. Like
Yeah.
there is no real division between those two things in their mind. And for most Jewish families, if their kid turns around and is pro-Palestine and anti-Zionist, that is like a family tragedy. I mean, that to them, they're so brainwashed. That's like their kid decided to become an anti-Semite. Like that's how they
Yeah.
see it. Like their kid is aligning with anti-Semites.
Yeah.
And that is part of why it can be so hard to deprogram people. It is a cult. It is Ziontology. It can be I've tried with
Yeah.
people I know. It is very, even if you make some progress, as soon as they deal with their family, they go back, man, because what they're going to have to do is probably get disowned. And most people are just not going to go there, man. They're not going to go there unless they really, really feel personally compelled to take up that fight. And most people are just not going to do that. It's not worth the grief.
Yeah, I wonder I don't know what the stats are. I mean, I think that I think we were talking about this the other day. So there are a couple things. One is that I think that some people will just not bring it up to their family. Like they're okay ignoring their family on it. That they know that their parents are Zionists, and they don't bring it up. I mean, we did have someone on the show, who was great, and their name is escaping me right now. They are in Chicago. They're a professor. Cannot remember the name. She was religious. She was Chabad, I think, and she planned to serve in the IDF. And then
Right.
she went to a funeral. Not Beth. What is her name? Brad, no pressure, but if you can look up the name, it was a woman from JVP, who did a hunger strike. JVP. I'm like seeing their name. Ash, I think Ash. So they, I believe Ash. Yeah. So Ash was going to move to Israel, and then Ash went to Israel, and someone said something offensive, and she was like, that's offensive. And then the relative is like, oh, you still think Palestinians are human beings. So Ash, for instance, her family, her parents cut her off. Her sister's in touch with her. I mean, I'm not exposing anything, secret. She said this on the show. I do think that some people, they just kind of like agree to disagree. They don't go there. And I'm only saying that, I'm not like saying that to push back. I'm saying that that's how I think some people manage it. Like they know that if they brought it up, they would be maybe disowned, or they would not be allowed to come to certain holidays. But depending on their perspective, I don't know.
Yeah, some manage it by not talking about it. You're absolutely right. But that's a very tense space to live in. Like if you can avoid the whole topic and not think too hard about it, that's my experience of where people will generally go. And I mean, the polling bears that out. Like I would like to be able to say, there's a very wide range of opinions on this in the Jewish community.
Right.
There isn't. 80% are Zionist, and the range of disagreement is, whether they think Palestinians should have a state or not,
right?
Whether the West Bank should be colonized, like that. That's the range of opinion in that 80%, right? To greater Israel or not to greater Israel. That's about as wide as the range of opinion goes. And then there's that 20%. That includes me, that includes you. You talk about being culturally Jewish. I gotta say, in a lot of ways, the last couple of years, the post October 7th world, in so many ways, has made it very difficult to engage with that heritage. It's tainted it. It's tainted it very much. And I went on Thanksgiving. I went to the 2nd Avenue Deli, and I was hesitant because I was afraid there'd be like flags, Stars of David. Wisely, they did not do any of that. But I was walking by. You shared my tweet the other day. I walked by Temple Shireth Israel, which is descended from the oldest Jewish congregation, not only in New York, it goes back to New Amsterdam, but in America. They go back to 1654. If you had told most of the generations of Jews that were part of that congregation, to be a Jew, you got to support this crackpot scheme to recolonize Palestine, they would have told you were nuts. For centuries, they would have told you were being blasphemous because you weren't supposed to go back over the wall until the Messiah comes to bring the people back. Today, over the entrance, there is an Israeli flag and an American flag. So you're forcing people to tacitly endorse this settler colonial project to take part in that religion. And this, of course, is what the Zionists want, because it makes it very, very difficult to separate the state of Israel from the Jewish religion. So it forces people into a position where if they want the one, they can't leave the other.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think that I understand your discomfort with like a mainstream or kind of like default Jewish identity, but not to sound self-righteous, like the Jewish identity I have is very much a Jewish identity that opposes injustice, including Zionism, right? So I think this is kind of like Norman Finkelstein talks about this. Like, it's not that all Jews were part of the civil rights movement, but they were overrepresented among the white people in the civil rights movement, right? So, and this is why it's so ironic that like people call Jews like us anti-Semitic. I'm like, you don't understand.
Self-hating.
Like the irony is that like we're the only hope for Jews. I don't mean this in a self-congratulating way, but like if anti-Semitism is on the rise, and they just say it just is because Jews are victims and hated. No, like if as Israel commits a live streamed genocide, the more Jews speak out, like the safer we are. I mean, the harder it is for anti-Semites to say that we all support Israel, the safer Jews are.
Yes.
That's
I
not why
think
I do it primarily, but that is a byproduct, I would say. Yeah.
it's definitely a thought that I have, and yeah, it's not why I do it.
Right. Same. It's
But
not why I do it either.
yes, I think maybe partly because I grew up blue collar. I grew up around that. I'm aware of what they are courting with a lot of this. Like, yeah, man, there's real anti-Semitism out there, and you're gonna bring out the real thing with this behavior. You're taking something that was a marginalized kind of an opinion. It's out there. It's out there. I grew up in a place where people were very comfortable with phrases like, "Yeah, the guy tried to fucking Jew me down,"
Right.
and
Sure.
like, yeah, that's there. Now you have made that from something that was kind of just, background noise in a pluralistic society. And you're starting to take a lot of the worst protocols of the elders of Zion kind of conspiracy theories, and you're legitimizing them. You have given the greatest recruiting opportunity to legit anti-Semites in the last 100 years. And they're fully seizing on it. They're fully seizing on it. I've seen it over the last 2 years. Right after October 7th, me and Keaton were both saying this was going to happen. It was very obvious.
Right.
And you've seen real anti-Semitism becoming more and more mainstream. You're seeing more and more people being able to say without any kind of rebuke, yeah, well, so maybe the Austrian painter had a point, huh? You see what they do? You see what they do? How do you have Larry Ellison, Bari Weiss taking over these media companies at the same time that you've got Jonathan Greenblatt literally crowing on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange about how Jewish investors are seizing power? Like, you couldn't do more to play to all the greatest hits of anti-Semitic tropes than these people are doing. You're literally buying up the media in broad daylight. The largest single private donor to the IDF, literally right after buying up Paramount, is making a hostile bid to take over Warner Brothers. Like, what more could you do to give oxygen to people who are saying, see, protocols of elders of Zion, that was real.
Yeah, or if you don't even so they're like the old anti-Semitic tropes, and then there's just the like, oh, I don't know a lot about Jews in general, and now all I see is that these people who are saying that they are the Jewish state are killing all these people. And where's the outrage? There is, thank God, that there's Jewish Voice for Peace, and if not now, but like you're saying, they're not, the majority.
They are not. And when you look at what they are inspiring, I don't think a lot of the useful idiots who are going along with the Sid Rosenbergs and the other freaks like that who play up the Islamophobia and just the absolutely, deranged Zionism. They're not wrong that there's anti-Semitism out there. And eventually, what's going to happen, sadly, I think, is there's going to hit a tipping point. When you get someone who's not bought by Israel, like Donald Trump is, like this is an irony of it. Because Trump has some modicum of control over his base, a loosening control, but some control over his base. His fanatical Zionism is paid for Zionism, not ideological, but works out the same. It's keeping a lid on that. Sooner or later, the lid's going to come off because supporting Israel is becoming such a political liability that eventually you're going to hit a tipping point where no politician wants to be identified with Israel anymore. And when that hits, it's going to remove the restraint on courting open anti-Semitism as a political tactic. When you get a figure with the control that Trump has, who's actually willing to go there, who's not owned by Israel, so it keeps
who
a
doesn't
check
have
on that.
like a Jewish son-in-law. I mean, it probably does something, right? That his Jewish
Sure.
grandkids. Yeah.
Sure. When you get that, you've laid the groundwork for everything they're warning against, which, as many have observed, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, it's exactly what the Israelis want, because how else do they justify their existence? They want Jews to be terrified, so they think they have to go live in Israel.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like Israel depends on anti-Semitism.
Right. And, you know, when you look at the people they put out there to represent them, like Rabbi Shmuley
Oh my
and
God.
Lizzie Savetsky, you can't imagine that anybody with 2 eyes and half a functioning brain is putting those people out there to allay
Right.
anti-Semitism.
Yes. Yes. I mean, you know, also, I don't think that this is a surprise to you, but some people in the comments are saying, you know, Nick Fuente, pro Nick Fuente stuff. And I just have to explain, like, he's not good. Like,
are
like,
you
I mean,
getting that, Katie?
yeah, I mean, I just don't,
You
I
don't
want to make
say.
sure, like, you know, one of the things that's so unfortunate is that people are so used to the term anti-Semitism being weaponized that people actually will fall. Some are just liars, right? But people will fall victim to the idea that, oh no, that person isn't an anti-Semite. That's just what they say. He's actually an anti-Zionist.
Right.
I mean, I've had
Yeah.
people, and some of them are obviously bad faith, but I've had people say that about David Duke. Like, I tweeted something out. What's that guy's name? There's 2 guys, Jake Shields, and then I can't remember the other one, but Jake Shields had on David Duke, and I was like, oh, silly me for thinking Jake Shields was anti-Semitic. And people are like, did you watch the video? Your ethno-narcissism is blinding you. He's not even he's not an anti-Semite, David Duke. Oh yeah,
Yes.
the Aryan guy is terrible. Who's the
Well,
other one? Ryan Dawson.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny talking to you about this, because I'm sure you run into a lot of what we run into. If you are a Jewish anti-Zionist, there's a certain kind of legit anti-Semite that is gonna like your content because they feel like even they're saying it.
Right.
See, the Jews are so bad, even the Jews are saying it, right?
Right.
And they'll take your content or your show or your commentary that way. And then as soon as you call out actual anti-Semitism, they go ballistic and start screaming about how, oh, see, in the end, the Jews go back to that no matter what. In the end, a Jew is a Jew. Yeah, man. It's the way that we have dealt with that over the years is, and this hasn't happened in a while. I think our brand is kind of out there enough now that we're not attracting a lot of that anymore. But when we were, every now and then we would do a segment that we knew would drive those people ballistic for that reason, so that they would unsubscribe and stop coming to our channel. Because if you let that group in, they'll destroy your channel. They'll destroy your channel because the people that you want in your comment section will not want to be around that
That's a good
energy.
point. Yeah.
And they'll just devour your whole channel, and then you're just left with a bunch of freaks that you don't want to do a show for. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, very often, I mean, you know, I don't have to tell you, people who do this, they're all about the likes and subscribes, man. They just chase the likes and subscribes. It's better to grow more slowly in a way that you feel good about, because if you grow that way, now you're trapped. Now you're trapped because the audience you wanted is gone.
Right.
And
Ugh,
now you're captured.
Anti-Semitic capture. Yeah. Also, it's great because it pushes back on the stereotype that we're greedy and just care about money.
Yeah.
So we're doing the work. Yeah.
It's true. We're doing the work. We're tipping 22%, people.
Yeah, exactly. So wait, how do you do this, like, this anti-Semitism cleanse?
I mean, if you, if you want to like do a high-powered anti-Semitic audience member colonic, do a Daryl Cooper segment.
Daryl Cooper.
That's our go-to when we want to blast all that out of the channel.
Right.
But like I said, we haven't really had to do that in a long time.
Yeah.
But we did like 6 of those.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because the first one we did, we were actually surprised. Like it was eye-opening. We didn't realize how much of that we had attracted.
Yeah.
So then, you know, we got ratioed, and there was, you know, and the tone was very like, we hope you realize now, like, you better give us what we want and you better not go there again. So the next show we did another one. And then the show after that, we did another one. And that pretty much changed the trajectory. If we had not done that, I mean, I'm glad we did. I wasn't even going to do that segment. Somebody brought it up to me. I didn't even know who this person was. Right. Because they were challenging me. They were telling me like, I bet you won't do this segment.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's a crackpot fed with a podcast. Who you know, is constantly saying things that are completely batshit, factually incorrect, and won't debate any historians.
Right. Right.
I promise you, no. But the fan club is such. I promise you, if you drop this clip, you're gonna get those fanboys in the comments.
Oh, great.
Bitching about the fact that I said something about Daryl Cooper, but you asked. You know, I'm telling you, like there is nothing that will piss those people off more than those segments. But honestly, I mean, you want something. He's not as relevant now as he was when we did those segments. I mean, have you done like Nick Fuentes kind of breakdowns? Because that's the kind of thing that does it.
Yeah, tell people about Nick Fuentes. All right, Brad, come on really quickly. So what do we got to tell people? We got to tell people that this was a great show, such a good chat.
Yes.
Brad has to go. He's helping out. Really quickly, if you are watching this live, you are so in luck because you got to see this whole thing. It's like almost 3 hours. Wow, this is like old school. But if you're watching this later and you want to see the full chat with Russ, which is fascinating, and we get into things ranging from Nick Fuentes to conspiracy theories to what else? Traveling to Asia.
His personal journey from Zionism. I mean, it went to a lot of different places.
Yeah. That'll probably be in the main thing, I think, but some of it won't be. Anyway, Brad's like, go to hell, Katie. All right, you can do that at patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. We will be doing another stream, a live one that I won't ask anyone for help for because it's vacation, holidays. I'll be doing one on Friday. Check back about the time. And then we'll be doing our show next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Anything else we need to say?
Just thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for everybody for Patreon for making this show possible. I hope whatever you're doing that you have a safe and happy holidays. Just love you guys, and can't wait to see you
before the birth of Jesus. So enjoy that one. Enjoy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, and we will see you not in the new year, but we'll see you before the new year, and we'll see you post Christmas.
We got one more. 2025.
Yeah, exactly. And please like the stream if you haven't already. Please subscribe. Let's get to 400,000 by 2026.
That would be outstanding.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Phantom Esfanta. Thank you to our guests, and thank you all for watching or listening. Bye.
Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man.